Hello, good evening. Welcome to this edition of Good Evening Ghana. Thank you very much for your time. The political temperature in Ghana this evening is really boiling following the inconclusive meeting held with between IPAC and the Electoral Commission. Tonight, we do have an editorial opinion on the matter that is plaguing most Ghanaian political observers, whether or not we should have a voters register. The analysis is that the Electoral Commission is prescribing one for sure. They have actually gone ahead to issue dates on which this will be done. Majority of the parties in opposition are unhappy with this matter. And last night I had the privilege of meeting one of the key members of the opposition who is advising on this matter. He gave me the reasons why they in the opposition are opposed to this matter. I'll share some of that with you. But today's meeting was inconclusive. Joy News reported that there could have been fisticuffs, but for the intervention of the Right Reverend Archbishop Palmer Buckle. So we will be following that story, but we do have an opinion editorial to present to you tonight on the whole voters register exercise. We'll show you the historical process through which this has gone from 1992, when we had just names on the voters register, up to the time where we had names and photographs, to the time when we had names and colored photographs, up to the time when we have biometric details of the individual voters on the register, which is the last one in 2012, which the Electoral Commission is seeking to change. We also stumbled upon a research report during our preparation. It's a report that was presented by the late eminent jurist, Justice V.C.R.A.C. Crabb. Justice Crabb was the chairman of a committee set up by the Electoral Commission in 2015 to find out whether, ahead of 2016's elections, Ghana needed a new voters register. This was because the opposition parties at the time were calling for a new voters register. And we'll show you a news item in which Dr. Baumia was ferociously calling for a new voters register. And we'll build up the history and ask you questions at the end. In this particular opinion editorial, we will not take a position or cast a verdict as we normally do, but we will raise the questions, and however you answer the questions, you can make a determination for yourself whether Ghana needs a new voters register or not. And so that's the first part of our program. It's an opinion editorial on the Electoral Commission and the new voters register. If you are just joining us, good evening. Welcome to Good Evening Ghana on Metro TV. We are live on DSTV on channel 277. We are live on Facebook. We are live online. And we're also live on Terrestrial 1, the GBC terrestrial channel. We are live also on Terrestrial 2, the NCA terrestrial channel. And we are also live on analog across the country. Do you remember this event? Do you remember it?
Nobody likes whiners. People that spend all their time whining all the time, I really get on people's nerves. So stop whining.
Really? Who travels 3,000 miles to be a whiner? We could have been whiners from our constituencies. We didn't need to come here. So this attitude has to change. If you want to engage us, then be serious about engaging us, because we're not here to play. Thank you.
Stop spending, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Please, we know it doesn't work. So stop whining all the time saying it doesn't work. If it worked, you probably wouldn't be sitting there. So nobody likes whiners, so stop whining.
Let the president know this attitude and this arrogance about we are whiners.
Yes, it doesn't work. Yes, it's a nightmare. We've all bought 3 plots of land and are still probably buying more and find that we don't own it. There is never such a thing as a shortcut. Shortcut inevitably leads to long journeys and headache. And so when you come with 2 weeks and say, I want to buy a house and go away, please, where you're sitting, do you buy a house in 2 weeks where you're living today? This is common sense. If you tell somebody I've got 2 weeks only to do something, he or she is going to sit there and say, I've got this one over my lap. This one is going to be an easy go. Life is going to be so good. They will take your money and chop it. And damn right for them to do it as well, because you should have known better. When's the last time you went to buy a house in the UK in 2 weeks just like that? It didn't happen.
Now, if you're going to tell us what's wrong with the system, but yet nobody gets fired, and then you want us to bring our money into the system, that's a problem.
It is not every time you want to make a decision, you have to see the minister, the deputy on every head. What is this thing? Where did this come from? Do you know how many people want to actually sit down and meet the Minister of Labor? Have you been to his office? There's hundreds of them. What is this thing like, I have to see you, give me your cell number? This phone doesn't stop ringing.
You are right. We came here to sit with the decision makers to formulate policy to help us integrate us into the system. Where are the decision makers? You tell me, where are they? Where are they? They are nowhere around here to listen to us. So now, everything we talk about here is going to be second and third class. It's going to be washed out, and whatever is left is going to be passed on to the decision makers. Everybody comes in here and has an attitude that, oh, I got something.
If you remember the story, then the Honorable Robert Ahom-Kalinse, who is also the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industries, is in the studio tonight. We're going to talk politics. That's Robert, beautiful man in your shot over there. We're going to talk raw politics tonight with Robert Ahom-Kalinse, former business executive of Coca-Cola, rose to the very high level to the pride of Ghana and Africa. He came back from Coca-Cola to the GIPC, the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, as his chief executive during the Kufuor era. Robert was booted out in 2010, of course, I believe, for political philosophy. He joined the MPP, as it were, and in 2012, he was very instrumental in developing the MPP campaign. One question I'll be asking him is that something that he developed in the MPP campaign in 2012 did not show up in the MPP governance in 2017. Robert had a fantastic idea. He wanted GIPC, the Ghana Free Zones Board, the Ghana Exim Bank, and all of those agencies to be put together as one, and it would have been a certain investment center, investment destination, and investment origin for Ghana. That didn't find expression in the 2016 manifesto nor in the 2017 governance. I'll be asking him that question. But another important reason why Robert Ahom-Kalinse is in the studio tonight is because he has taken another step, a new epoch in his political career. He wants to be a member of parliament. Of all places, he chose Kumewu in the Ashanti region. Kumewu has a historical relationship with the MPP. It was the constituency of Krobo Edusei in the First Republic. Krobo Edusei was an Nkrumahist, and Edusei could win Kumewu for Kwame Nkrumah's CPP, even though the Ashanti region was heavily UP. So Kumewu has had that kind of significance. Of course, Kumewu also has contentions with Kumasi in the history of the Ashanti regional capital, contentions that has a story about Osei Tutu I and Okomfo-Anokye. So Kumewu is particularly important in the analysis of any Ashanti socio-cultural narrative. Ahom-Kalinse chooses to come from Kumewu, or to become MP of Kumewu in building his parliamentary career. So we'll be talking to him about that as well. That promises to be a very, very interesting interview. Robert Ahom-Kalinse, that's coming up. Before then, our editorial on Electoral Commission. So let's take a short break. When we come back, we will hear our editorial opinion. Should the Electoral Commission have a new voters register, or should the Electoral Commission just purge the voters register that we have and let's move on in 2020's election? What is the historical antecedent to this question? That's on our editorial coming up in a minute after the commercial break. This is Good Evening Ghana and is live.
How far can you go? When your village is connected to the global village, you go. When 30 million people have a bank in their pocket, they go. When 560 million of us can plug into a high-speed digital highway, we go. When you can use technology to teach where books can't reach, we all go. When over 5 million people have a job to do and 4 million small businesses can make it big, they go. When you're driven by the unstoppable spirit of Africa, you go. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
My name is Fifi Roxon, aka Azeman, aka forget about dough. The time here say self-line they can't tell you best. We are make what I go tell me. But as I talk, my party say I won't put internet for my taxi inside. They don't understand. Some they laugh me, some they say I rush now. But no ball. And the boy never the sports us. But now, you mean they get all the dropping for the station. Every passenger won't enter my taxi. Because once you enter bed, you feel connected to the Wi-Fi and you will get free fast 4G internet from Self-Line. Massa, it no be easy. Even in traffic, passengers know the ball. Sometimes if it take me dropping so roaming because of internet. Massa, Self-Line in your life, or record one day.
Surfline, it's about time.
Why? So you are the one who has been disposing of urine and human excreta into the dustbins. Oh, please. The dustbins are meant for litter and garbage, not for dumping of human excreta or urine. It's not a healthy habit, crap. Stop it, please. Oh yeah, take it to the public toilet or something. The use of bins as dumping sites for excreta or urine is highly inappropriate. Aside the stench, we risk the outbreak of communicable diseases like cholera or typhoid. Keep the environment clean and healthy. Do not dump urine or excreta into bins.
Good evening again, and this is Good Evening Ghana, and it's live. If you are just joining us, we have two topics for discussion tonight. First, our editorial opinion on the Electoral Commission situation, and second, we're going to talk to Roberta Adom-Otchere, Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, who is now joining Parliament, or has evinced an intention to join Parliament as a member of Parliament from the Ashanti region, from Kumewu of all places. So, without much ado, let's go into our editorial studio and listen to our editorial opinion. You are free to comment on it on Good Evening Ghana Official on Facebook. You can get us there and send us your comment and share your views with us. Here is the editorial.
Ghana, we now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave which have brought results.
Thank you. So, as you may have heard, there has been a big tussle over the announcement by the Electoral Commission that they would open the register. Actually, they would have a new voters register for the 2020 election. If the Electoral Commission does that, this will be the first voters register since the 2012 election, which register was used for 2012 and for 2016's election. The Electoral Commission is saying that they will change the voters register, and various reasons have been advanced for it. Let's go back and take a historical look at the development of Ghana's election. Now, here's J.J. Rawlings voting in the first election in 1992. You will see that the ballot box that he votes in is an opaque ballot box. You can tell. Albert Dubois, the professor, his challenger, General Eskin, one of the other challengers of J.J. Rawlings, all voted in this election in that opaque ballot box. And so that was the first instance. Then we moved on. This is Captain Kojo Chikata, the feared security capo. I'd like you to bring back Captain Kojo Chikata if you can, because he was a feared man, the feared security capo. Okay, so that is Captain Kojo Chikata. Hold it, yes. This is Captain Kojo Chikata, the commander of national security for many, many years, one of the most feared men in Ghana in the 80s. And there he was casting his ballot in the 1992 election. Most likely he voted for J.J. Rawlings. And this was sorry, I wanted you to take off something. Now, this is Dr. Liman also voting in an opaque ballot box. Dr. Liman, the president of the Third Republic, who also contested elections in the Fourth Republic, voted. So you see how the ballot box looks like. This is how the ballot box used to look like. It's opaque. You can't tell what's inside and what's outside. You don't know whether when it was brought, it was stamped. Usually and typically, the electoral officers will show the opaque ballot box to everyone to show that it's empty before the voting starts. But that happened in Accra and a few urban areas. Really, no one knows what happened in rural areas, whether they were also showed this and that. So there was major concern after 1992 elections that going forward, we have to change the opaque ballot boxes. So here is J.J. Rawlings again voting in 1996 election. I hope the ballot box will come and you can see. This time it was a transparent ballot box. J. Kufuor also casting his vote in 1996. Hold it there, thank you very much. And you have the transparent ballot box. So this was the development from 1992 up until 1996. The difference was that the 1992 was the opaque ballot boxes and 1996 was the transparent ballot boxes now on your screen. John Ajekum Kufuor voting in that election that he ran for president on the ticket of the New Patriotic Party, replacing Professor Albert Dubois. Okay, so here is JJ, and I hold it there, hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. So that is me in the shot over there with Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, who is just about to cast his vote in the 2000 election. Okay, so let's move it on. Rawlings voted in the transparent ballot box. Now, these fingerprint stuff had been added. It's important that we see the fingerprint again. the fingerprint had been added to be indelible. So this was a big issue in Ghana. We started from an ink that was not indelible, and therefore people said you could wash it away. And then we got to a fingerprint, an ink that was indelible. So the whole fight in this particular 2000 elections were twofold. We needed an indelible ink. So what is being put on JJ's finger over there, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, the president of the republic at the time, what is being put on his finger is believed to be an indelible ink, which he will not be able to clean. The concern, and I'm doing the historical build-up from where we have come, the concern was that this ink, which was used in 1992 and 1996, which was not indelible, allowed people to clean up the ink and then go and vote again, so that they could vote 3 or 4 times in areas where people were not watching because the ink was not indelible. So in 2000, this was introduced, indelible ink and photo ID cards. So there were ID cards that were used in 1996. They were not color ID cards. Now they were color ID cards. JJ cast his vote there in a transparent ballot box. To all intents and purposes, he cast his vote. And then he gave me a short interview over there. To all intents and purposes, he cast his vote for Professor Mills. Here is the man that we have missed. Here is the man that we have all missed, Mr. Dan Latte, who in 2000 also cast his vote in a transparent ballot box. You can see that over there. Transparent ballot boxes were used in the year 2000's elections. And then there was this is Charles Reku Brobe. He also contested as a presidential candidate. Charles Brobe contested on the ticket of a new party, and I used to like his party mantra. It was growing people for Ghana's development. That's something that we have missed that we may have to go back to. Reku Brobe said growing people for Ghana's development, not growing cocoa, not mining gold, not mining bauxite, but growing people for Ghana's development. Nobody really listened to him in 2000, but that's something that I think someday we have to go back to it and begin to grow people for Ghana's development instead of always growing something from underneath the earth. Charles Reku Brobe also voted in a transparent ballot box. And this is Augustus Guzitano, his wife next to him. At the time, he ran the elections on the National Reform Party, and he was a breakaway from the NDC in the year 2000. Guzitano also goes to cast his ballot in a transparent ballot box. This is Professor George Hagan. You all remember him, very nice, clean, fancy man. Professor Hagan was the candidate of the CPP, and he also cast his ballot in a transparent ballot box at the campus of the University of Ghana. This is probably another voting. So this is John Ajekum Kufuor, casting his ballot now in the year 2000 in the election that he actually won in a transparent ballot box with an indelible ink. J.A. Kufuor won this 2000 election. In the picture there are some of his key people, Mr. Gabin Ketia in the hat hood, and they later became Ghana's ambassador to South Korea. So that's John Ajekum Kufuor casting his ballot in a transparent ballot box. We are doing the, hey, there you go, the very loved. So this is what I'm talking about. It will come back in a minute. The photo ID card. Now, we needed a Supreme Court decision. There's Professor Mills arriving at the University of Ghana. This is what I'm talking about. What you see in the shot over there is what we call the color photo ID card. So on the ID card side, on the ID card that gets you to go and vote, we started with just names, no ID cards in 1992. We progressed then to ID cards without photographs. Then we progressed to ID card with black and white photographs. And we went in 2000 elections by a Supreme Court decision. That's how important this whole conversation is. Ghana has moved from one step to the other. Really, at every point when there's an introduction of any new thing, it has been fought. This one, there has to be a Supreme Court decision. The opposition had to go to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to insist that the Electoral Commission must have color photo ID cards. That's Professor Mills's ID card. That's how everyone's ID card looked like. So this is how we have developed. So J.E.A. Mills, the most beloved, also cast his vote in the year 2000 election. At this time, he was a vice president and he voted for himself. He was a candidate, and there he goes to put it in, and he's waving at everybody. I'm sure these are nostalgic pictures for some of you. It was nostalgic for us in the studio this morning when we were looking at them. So this is the indelible ink that we are talking about. This is J.A. Kufuor. This must be election 2004. J.A. Kufuor as president of Ghana, and his wife, So the last one is Papa Kwesi Indum, who also cast the votes, I believe, for himself in a transparent ballot box. So this is the short history about how we have transposed ourselves as a nation in terms of the laws that govern our electoral process, from photo ID card, indelible ID ink, this and that and that. That's how we've come. At each time, there has to be a quarrel, a sort of a quarrel. Then we went to Supreme Court sometime. So this story ends in 2004. Okay, then came 2008, and we had used the same processes in 2004 that were applied in 2008. So the voters register, I believe, had been changed just before the 2000 election. It had been used for election 2000. It has been used for election 2004. And after election 2008, you remember the whole concern about election 2008. It was too close to call for so many days, and there was a third round of ballots, so many analysis. And in particular, what gave rise to the conversation about a new voters register is that, and look at the record. Sorry, I didn't bring it to the studio. 2008, the spoiled ballots were over 200,000. And this is an election that ended, especially in the first round, the leading candidate, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of the MPP, ended with 49.7% of the votes. He needed 50 plus 1 to win. He needed 25,000 to win. However, there were over 250,000 spoiled ballots. And the whole world was worried. But how did you have so many spoiled ballots in Ghana? In fact, some journalists even teased some politicians like Dr. Indum and others that spoiled ballots were more than their own votes that they garnered. It was a phenomenal occurrence in the history of elections in the world. Over 250,000 spoiled ballots in 2008 election. So that gave a lot of concern. Now, why are we having all of these processes? Let's change the voters register. And so we decided to improve the voters register in 2012 by having a biometric voters register. And Dr. Afarijan led the process to have a biometric voters register. Meant that someone could not vote for another person, and that the whole concern about overvoting, which is that there's a larger number of votes than people on the register at a particular polling station, was going to be cured by this biometric voters register. And the biometric voters register came with what they call BVRs, a machine that you have to test your thumb in, and the machine must recognize that you are who you say you are, and then you can cast your ballot. So that was 2012. It was this 2012, what we thought was a foolproof process, that completely almost broke down. And it was the only election in the history of Ghana since independence that we had to vote on 2 separate days, because the machine apparently broke down. And once the machine broke down, the law says you cannot have manual verification. That was part of the EI that went to Parliament. The executive instrument governing the elections that goes to Parliament before every election contained the fact that you cannot have a manual verification. But on the night of the first day of the election, everyone agreed that we should revert to manual verification. So there were 2 days of voting. The Electoral Commission decided that they would vote again, and the voting occurred. After that came the famous election petition. And in the election petition, there were concerns that the second day of voting had been applied for so many purposes, and that the opposition party that has lost the election, the MPP, and who had gone to court for this election petition, were sure that the voters register must be changed. We have to say that the MPP made a big deal out of the voters register after 2012's election. In 2013 and 2014, in the period building up to the election petition, they made the point that this voters register must be changed and must be sanitized. Here is a bit of what happened during the day. We called this from a news item which was broadcast around the time. Have a look at it.
This was followed by a news conference by the party executives at which evidence was presented. Party chairman Mr. Jake Obechebilamte commended the party's foot soldiers for their diligence in providing documents required in gathering evidence. It was analyzed by the running mate, Dr. Mahamudu Baumia, who described the alleged anomalies discovered at the polling stations across the country as massive and pervasive. He said the irregularities began with the voters' register. He alleged that after the voter exhibition exercise in November, it had an excess of over 1 million registered names.
Now, across all the 24,000 or so polling stations that we've looked at so far, overvoting was 620,443. Voting without verification was 456,933. Same serial number for different polling stations, 50,278. Missing signature on the pink sheet, 208,523. And words and figures don't match, 3,841. Now, in total, these votes amount to 1,340,080. All of this is backed by documented evidence.
So that was Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia talking about the voters register at the time. So this became a big part of the narrative during the last days of Dr. Farijan as electoral commissioner and the early days of Madam Charlotte Osei as the new electoral commissioner. So because of the pressure that the MPP put, especially writing memoranda after memoranda and insisting that there should be a new voters register, incidentally, the NDC at the time, the ruling party, did not think that there should be a new voters register. Thankfully, both parties have stuck to their guns. Years later, the NDC is at the same place, still believing that there should be no new voters register. The MPP is also at the same place, believing that there has to be a new voters register. So, but the voters register was not changed before the 2016 election. In the election petition, the judges talked about the register, but we'll come to that in another time, because tonight we are giving you the facts without really stating a verdict on this matter. Charlotte Osei, the electoral commissioner, commissioned a team of eminent persons led by Justice VCRAC Crabb. Justice Crabb's commission presented a report. It's a report of 2015. The purpose of Crabb's commission was to find out whether there should be a new voters register or not. So this is the Justice Crabb commission, and is a letter, is a report of the commission that was delivered to Madame Charlotte Osei. You can see the date, 21 December 2015, and is a report of the panel. So that is to the chairperson, dear Mrs. Charlotte Osei, I have the power to present to you the report of the panel you appointed to deal with the issue of the voters register, consequent on the allegations of a bloated register of voters. May I, on behalf of my colleagues on the panel and on my behalf, thank you ever so sincerely for giving us this great opportunity for being of service to our dear country. And it's signed by the most eminent, the most respected, the distinguished jurist, VCRAC Crabb. So this is the report that we chanced upon, and we looked at it. It's a long, big report, almost 100-page or so report. Here are some of the things that Justice Crabb's report said about a new voters register. We picked 3 of them, and we'll recommend the report to anyone who is interested. And I think that media houses should be interested in looking at it. Look for the Justice VCRAC Crabb report of 21 December 2015 that was sent to the Electoral Commission upon allegations of a bloated voters register. This is the first matter that we picked up. Here it is, and it's on page 9 of the report. And it says that there is some evidence that the register of voters possibly contains a substantial number of names of people whose records are currently not valid. By all indications, the number of registered voters is not unusually high, but it may be in excess of the potential number. For emphasis, we read again, I'm sure viewers at home can see it clearly. It says, there is some evidence that the register of voters possibly contains a substantial number of names of people whose records are currently not valid. By all indications, the number of registered voters is not unusually high, but it may be in excess of the potential number. So this is Justice Crabb's, one of his conclusions, that there could be a substantial number of people in the voters register whose records are not valid, whatever that means. He says that the number may not be unusually high, but the register could be in excess of the potential number of voters in the country. And then he makes another conclusion on another page. We'll share that with you now. That's on page 18. Justice Crabb says, and I quote, "The consequences of a bloated register or numerous invalid records, which he has already identified, are not ignorable. Maintaining a register with so many invalid records has implications of the following." This is Justice Crabb speaking in the report that he presented. Now, the implications he presents to the Electoral Commission are as follows. Potentially rewarding corrupt practices of not only those who will come to lead the country, but also of public servants and those given temporary responsibility of managing the voting system. Justice Crabb says if you have a voters register that is problematic, what you get is that you may be rewarding corrupt practices of not only politicians who want to lead our country, but also public servants and those given temporary responsibility of managing the voting system. Number 2, B, he says, the most ingenious wins over the will of the people. He's saying that the most ingenious, the clever, the one who can steal, can exploit a voters register that is not great, and they can win over the will of the people. So you can have an elected person who is not the choice of the people, but he was able to rig the election because he exploited the voters register. That's what Justice Crabb says in B. In C, he says that perpetuators, this system where you don't have a good voters register, it perpetuates violence in the communities, because where people hear the results and they think that these results could not have been, and that these results are too far from the actual truth, there could be violence in the communities. Justice Crabb makes a third observation on page 23 of the report that we have showed you, and he says as follows: as the system BVM was designed for resolving only multiple voting and multiple registrations, it cannot contribute to addressing the issue of persons who are not citizens of Ghana, of minors, nor of the deceased. Now, this is very, very important as far as we are concerned in terms of our research, and why we think that we may have to be doing a new voters register every now and then until we have the national ID card system. Whatever voters register we have, by the system we have, Justice Crabb makes this important observation, that the system was designed for resolving only two things: multiple voting of a candidate. A particular voter wants to vote 3 times or 4 times for his favorite candidate, which is illegal. The system will detect it. And multiple registrations, which is I register in Ladadekutupon here in Laboni, then I go and register in Bompata in Kumasi, then I go to register in Takra there, I register in Cape Coast, and on voting day, I vote one here, go and vote there, and get other people to vote for me over there. That the system can detect. What the system cannot detect is that it cannot detect persons who are not citizens of Ghana, so that people who may not be citizens of Ghana, who ought not to have the right to participate in choosing our leaders, can participate in choosing our leaders either because they are rented, because they are hired, or because they become proxy of some political interest, that they can do that. And the system as we have it cannot detect that. And it also cannot detect minors. So if I'm 14 years old and I look big enough and I think that I'm 18, or I say that I'm 18, there's no way in which the system will detect that. So that's what Justice Crabb said. So having a look at all of these things Justice Crabb said, let us conclude this editorial by putting to you, our viewers, the questions that we have. And if we answer these questions in the affirmative or in the negative, we can make a conclusion. So question number 1 is as follows: will a new voters register represent an improvement on the old one? Let's ask ourselves that question. Is it true or not will a new voters register represent an improvement on the old one? If it will, we all answer that in the affirmative. I'm guessing that most of us are going to answer this question in the affirmative. Yes, a new voters register will represent an improvement on the old one. Next question that we are putting to you in this editorial is as follows: will an improved register add to the credibility of the election 2020? So we are assuming that the first question is answered in the affirmative. The next question is this: will an improved register add to the credibility of election 2020? Okay, let's look at the next one. And it's our final question for you tonight. And the question is, does it mean we will keep changing every 2 election cycles at astronomical cost to the national exchequer? Does it mean, if we're answering the first 2 questions in the affirmative, that this voters register will be an improvement on the other one, and whether that improvement will add to the credibility of the election, then does it mean, in this third question, that we should be changing the voters register with every 2 election cycles at astronomical cost to the national exchequer? That's the question we're asking. And this question we can answer. It doesn't mean that we should be doing that, because we're going to have the national ID card system. And what the national ID card system will do is that it will be able to solve the problem that Justice Crabb had. The national ID card system will be able to eliminate death, and it will be able to register birth. Registering birth also means that it will be able to tell the age of the candidate. So if you were registered in 2000, in 2010, the national ID card system will know that you are 10 years old. So if you show up to vote and you present your national ID card and they swipe it, they will know that you are 11 years old. They know you are 10 years old. They know you are 16 years old. They know you are 17 years old and you are not entitled to vote. Because of the biometrics that the national ID card is going to capture, it will be able to do that. So we will, once we have the ID card, and hopefully this will be the last election that we'll fight without the ID card. Once we have the ID card, we will be able to know that we don't have to, every 2 election cycles, go through the process. But for 2020 election, your guess is as good as mine. The questions have been put. Do you think, given all the circumstances, that a new voters register will be an improvement on the old one? If it will be an improvement on the old one, do you think it will add to the credibility of the election? If you answer both questions in the affirmative, then you can answer the bigger question: are you with the Electoral Commission on doing a new voters register, or are you with the opposition who says? So last night, as I said, I met an important member of the opposition group, and I asked him, what is the concern of a political party against a new voters register that will obviously add credibility to the next election? And he said to me that my question is legitimate. However, their concern is that the reasons that the Electoral Commission have so far advanced for the voters register don't seem credible. So I asked him to explain further. He said some of the reasons are plain, simple untruths, where they said that something is not working or something is working, the reason for which they have to change it. All those technical reasons they've given, because they say that what the Electoral Commission has said is untrue, it has generated suspicion amongst them. But the opposition, by and large, agree that a new voters register will be an improvement on the old one. And that if there's an improvement on the old register, it will add to the credibility of the 2020 elections. They generally agree on that. Their issue, though, is that, according to the man I met yesterday, their issue is that the reasons that the Electoral Commission have been given. So maybe the Electoral Commission must reroute their reasons and redirect their reasons and let every Ghanaian agree that if we do have a new voters register, it will improve the system. Also, there's a big issue about the economics, that there's too much money going to be spent. Well, that money being spent on the Electoral Commission, our view of the matter is that it's good money because it's going to go to a lot of Ghanaians. It's going to create temporal employment for a lot of teachers. It's going to create temporal employment for a lot of graduates, because this is a retail exercise. So you're going to have people sit down and write names. We're going to pay them on a daily basis, and they're going to be paid UN rates. So that's good for the economy. So all the 400, etc., that is coming in is money that is coming in for an economic multiplier. Let cool heads prevail. Let us understand everybody. Nobody is making nonsense. What everybody is saying is partly sensible, and everybody is interested in the good of Ghana. The NDC is interested in the good of Ghana. Johnson Asiedu Nkatia is interested in the good of Ghana. John Boedu is interested in the good of Ghana. Madam Jean Mensah paramountly is interested in the good of Ghana. Let's understand that. Let cool heads prevail. Let's come together and let this thing work. We want to go to a credible election. That's what everyone wants. So if this will give us a credible election, why shouldn't we go for it? But how should it be communicated? Who has been disrespected? Who has to be apologized to? Something must be said above the table. I'm terribly disappointed that this morning's meeting also ended in a stalemate. But I think there's still room for us to improve. That's the end of our editorial. Ahom Kalinse is next after the break. This is Good Evening Ghana and is live.
We now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave which have brought results.
Entertainment just got better and exciting. Metro TV is now on 2C TV. Enjoy your favorite shows, movies, news, documentaries, sports, music videos, and many more anywhere, anytime. Watch Metro TV all over the world, no matter where you are. Europe, America, Asia, Middle East, all on 2C TV. Just download the app on your mobile device and enjoy everything on Metro TV on 2C TV. 2C TV, absolute freedom.
From September 1st, Ghana is going 100% paperless at the ports.
No, we are here for all of us our interest, not for any individual interest.
As for paperless, no dear. But we need more education.
Any situation which throws light is a good situation. Eye on Port is a perfect intervention.
Eye on Port is also adding to the growth of the countries going forward in development.
Adom-Otchere has come to upgrade and promote the industry.
This is Iron Port, now interactive, showing live on Metro TV every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Iron Port, transparency in doing business and building nation. Proudly brought to you by
The show is a funny one.
He's a king of prime time. Do you want a linguist? Or you want fetish priest?
This KSM show is an extraordinary.
Yep, every Friday on the Prime Time show.
This is the numero uno show in the whole of Africa.
If there's one show I don't miss, it's the KSM show, the king of prime time.
KSM show, Noji Manchaya, prime time.
Keep watching.
Really, what else would you be watching other than the KSM?
That's what I watch. All smart people do this.
The
KSM Show. The KSM Show, Fridays at 9 p.m. on Metro TV.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Set you free. 2 + 2 is 4, -1, that's 3 quick maths. It's for the King Return of King Mufasa, the modern day Bob Marley.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
Monday. Welcome to the MVC. MVC, your #1 weekend music video chat buster that keeps you updated and glued to your seat for 1,800 seconds.
MVC, every Saturday at 5 p.m.
In Ghana, a lot happens overnight. You wake up with new questions every day.
What kind of temperature do you expect today?
How bad is the traffic today? Does the city look like stabilizing any moment from now, while prices of commodities are still high on the market?
We start our day early, so you can have all the information you need all day long.
Jackie, King, and AJ have all the info you need.
GMG Plus, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. every weekday.
Nobody likes whiners. People that spend all their time whining all the time, I really get on people's nerves. So stop whining.
Really? Who travels 3,000 miles to be a whiner? We could have been whiners from our constituencies. We didn't need to come here. So this attitude has to change. If you want to engage us, then be serious about engaging us, because we're not here to play. Thank you.
Stop spending, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. This, please, we know it doesn't work. So stop whining all the time saying it doesn't work. If it worked, you probably wouldn't be sitting there. So nobody likes whiners, so stop whining.
Let the president know this attitude and this arrogance about we are whiners.
Yes, it doesn't work. Yes, it's a nightmare. We've all bought 3 plots of land and are still probably buying more and find that we don't own it. There is never such a thing as a shortcut. Shortcut inevitably leads to long journeys and headache. And so when you come with 2 weeks and say, I want to buy a house and go away, please, where you sitting, do you buy a house in 2 weeks where you're living today? This is common sense. If you tell somebody I've got 2 weeks only to do something, he or she is going to sit there and say, I've got this one over my lap. This one is going to be an easy go. Life is going to be so good. They will take your money and chop it. And damn right for them to do it as well, because you should have known better. When's the last time you went to buy a house in the UK in 2 weeks just like that? It didn't happen.
Now, if you're going to tell us what's the system, but yet nobody gets fired, and then you want us to bring our money into the system, that's a problem.
It is not every time you want to make a decision, you have to see the minister, the deputy on every head. What is this thing? Where did this come from? Do you know how many people want to actually sit down and meet the Minister of Labor? Have you been to his office? There's hundreds of them. What is this thing like, I have to see you, give me your cell number? This phone doesn't stop ringing.
You are right. We came here to sit with the decision makers to formulate policy to help us integrate us into the system. Where are the decision makers? You tell me, where are they? Where are they? They are nowhere around here to listen to us. So now, everything we talk about here is going to be second and third class. It's going to be washed out, and whatever is left is going to be passed on to the decision makers. Everybody comes in here and has an attitude that, oh, I got something better to do.
Okay, put Robert Haum-Kalinsi on air, because he's the most important person here right now.
I'm not sure about that.
Good to see you, Robert.
Good to be here.
Excellent, excellent,
Really good
excellent.
To
It's
see
a long
again.
time.
It's been a while.
Why were you whining?
Watching that. It's been a while since I've seen it. I'm upset with myself watching that.
You were whining.
It's been a while since I've seen that. Very interesting.
You had
shot.
the president to apologize for you a few
It
days
was
later.
the most humbling time I've ever had in my life.
Did you regret making those statements to your colleague diaspora, because you came from there?
You know, it was interesting. There's no doubt that the statements made were completely inappropriate in that time. And especially when you see the way it's been sequenced, which is completely contrary to what happened on the day.
Yes, I have to say, that's our own way.
And you can see that, but it's okay. It taught me a very big lesson. The difference between making statements as a private citizen and making statements as a public servant, and how that can be construed or misconstrued if it's not put together in the same way. And it also said, you know, if you take a sentence and you chop off parts of it, it can have the exact opposite meaning.
Yes, yes.
But be that may be, you need to understand that when in the political space.
I see. Have you spoken to the diaspora people? Have you?
Oh, I have. You know, it was very interesting. I've spent my whole life speaking to diaspora because I'm one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And interestingly, in fact, a week and a half before that particular speech, I'd given exactly the same speech in London.
I see.
Exactly the same speech.
And nothing happened?
Nothing. In fact, that speech that was given, contrary to what was shown there, the gentleman actually was not in the same room, by the way.
His responses were at a different forum.
Yes.
Around the same time, I think the next day or something.
It was about 2 days later.
Yes, yes.
And he actually was upset because the panel to him was, in his words, lightweight. But if you actually look at the full piece, I got 3 standing ovations from that particular speech. Why? Because I was asked by the organizers to be brutally frank, to express my experiences of coming back home and how that could be perceived or not be perceived. And the way it turned out versus where I tried to, and I was trying to build a message to a diaspora. And that message clearly got completely lost in the process and how it was, how I the words. And I actually started, interestingly, if you have that clip, you should try and show it, by apologizing to
For
the
what
audience.
you were going to say.
For what I was, because I said, I'm going to use some very English terminology here. And I apologized for those terminology because I wanted to make a statement and wanted to try and characterize what some of those issues will be. And clearly it was not a word that should have been used. And as I said, the whining, it is a very English terminology.
Yeah.
In England, people use it often, but clearly wrong
And it's not
environment.
derogatory?
No, it's not. And not in the same way. It always depends how you put it. The way, you know, you can tell somebody something in a certain manner, how it is presented and how it's received can be very different based on the environment. So, but for me, it was a big lesson. It was a big lesson in public speaking, because as I said, I have been speaking to the diaspora for 30 years.
Yeah.
In everything that I do. I've been a motivational speaker for diaspora all this time to encourage them to come back home, to engage. I've been involved in diaspora policies, whether it's AGOA, whether it's linked to investment funds and finance, all my life. So it was a big shock to the system. But as I said, you learn. It's not whether you fall or not, it's how quickly you
What's
get
your
up again.
political roots, Mr. Ahom-Kalense? Because your name is typically Fanti.
Yes, it is.
Yes, Ahom-Kalense, and your lifestyle is also Fanti.
Is it? Is there such a thing as a Fanti lifestyle?
You're a Dadaba guy, you know, raised up British boy, worked in Coca-Cola, good job, you know.
Oh, but Ashantis do the same. It's not just
no,
for
we Ashantis don't do that.
No, that's not true. Look at your suit you're wearing. You're looking very dapper.
You're a very Dadaba guy. Your life is Fanti. And then you come into politics,
yes.
Which is understandable. And because people like you coming into politics. I mean, there's a generation of you, the Deputy Minister of Communication, who it was obvious came to politics because you wanted to change something.
Yes.
You didn't come to politics because you wanted bread.
No.
Because you had your own bread, by the grace of God. The kind of job you did at Coca-Cola was a very well-paying job, and it was an international global job. You leave that job and come to GIPC to assist President Kufuor with the gamut of investment attention that Ghana was getting. You did an excellent job. I mean, one of the big things is moving the GIPC away to an office that you thought was commensurate with the status. The GIPC being returned to that office after you left. All of that. So people are not suspicious of you when you get into MPP politics. Everybody understands that. Look, it looks like Robert wants to help. But what's really your political roots?
It's very interesting. I actually come from two very different political roots. If you look at my father and my mother's side, what people tend to focus on is my father. My father was what I would call...
Your father is Ahom-Kalense.
My father is Kwesi Ahom-Kalense. So that's the Fanti from Cape Coast. Very Fanti. Okay. As Fanti as you can get from Cape Coast. Okay. Going back to the 1850s. This is how far we trace back. Originally from Salt Pond.
So the 1850 you talk about is your grandfather?
It's my great-grandfather. So we started in Salt Pond. In fact, we started Elmina, Salt Pond, Cape Coast.
So what, UGCC?
This is going... In fact, the family home is 4 doors away from the creation of UGCC in Salt Pond.
Or in SACE.
So if you look at the, UGCC is at the corner.
Yeah.
It's at the corner. If you go just a little bit in 3 houses on the other side, that was the Ollens-Lindsay family home.
This is Cape Coast or Salt Pond?
Salt Pond.
I see.
And then in Cape Coast, we are what is now called Arthur Mills High Street, but it was Coronation Street. So leading to London Bridge, if you remember that.
Okay, so your great-grandfather and your father were with Casely Hayford.
All of that group, very much so.
and others.
Very much
Ghanaian
so.
Politics started from there, really.
Well, the origins of most of the politics was Salt Pond.
Yeah,
I
Salt
think
Pond,
this is something that we sometimes forget. But my father was a revolutionary. He was somebody that believed in... He was a socialist, no ifs, buts, or maybe about it.
So he was an Nkrumahist?
He was more than an Nkrumahist. He believed in it. He was the Adjutant General of the Workers' Brigade. He had a young
That's very
age,
socialist.
Very much so. He believed, he had a few things that defined him as a person. The name Ahomka came from his being that a healthy mind and a healthy body.
Okay.
So when he was teaching at the Saddle, he created a club.
He taught at the Saddle?
My father taught at the Saddle.
That's interesting.
Most of my uncles went to the Saddle. Unfortunately, they shipped me out of town, but most of them went to the Saddle.
So you didn't go to the Saddle?
No, unfortunately not.
You didn't go to Achimota?
I didn't go to Achimota.
You went to school in England?
I spent 3 days in Achimota.
And then you went to school in England?
In England.
That's very data bias.
I'm not sure about data bias.
But did you go to primary school in Cape Coast at least?
I started my class 1 was in Sakasaka School in Tamale.
Oh, that's interesting.
Workers' Brigade. Remember, that was the headquarters was in Tamale. My mother was the matron of Northern, that was physical Northern Ghana, in the Workers' Brigade. So my father was posted in Ashanti as the head of the Workers' Brigade at that time for the Ashanti region. Met my mother. I was born in Efijase. And then they went to Tamale together. So, but his healthy lifestyle, healthy Ahomka, then became the Fanti equivalent of healthy Ahomka. So he was actually christened. The family name is Ollens-Lindsay. That is our family name. But some of the things he did, which to this day amazes me, is that, he led a march by foot from Cape Coast all the way to the Algerian desert, through Ouagadougou, to go and protest against the French who were then testing atom bombs in the Algerian desert.
Oh, that's complicated.
Yes, he did.
A Gold Coaster at the time.
Oh, yes.
Was marching to protest against the French.
Yes, because...
But the French had nothing to do with Gold Coast.
But the French were testing atom bombs in Algeria, and he didn't believe that was the right thing to be done.
By this time, was Ghana independent?
Yes, this was in 60.
So this is Ghana.
So
what was your father's relationship with the Osajifo?
So that is what really brought him into prominence. He was then seen. That's where the name came from. He was also a bit of a guerrilla warfare. So he trained with Che Guevara and others in Congo. So
I see. That's interesting.
So when he came to prominence at that time, he believed vigorously in the Ghanaian people, and that is something that I learned from him, the belief in yourself and ourselves, in the belief to get things done. And that is where he came to prominence. So he rose up to be the Adjutant General of the Workers' Brigade. And the first time he tells me he went to jail, he passed away, my father passed away in December, a year and a bit ago.
Yeah.
The first time he went to jail was in 66, and as you were mentioning, he actually came out of jail with Kobedusei, because they were both in jail at that time.
Okay, so 66 after the coup?
After the coup. That was
so
the
your
first
father
time.
was seen as an opponent of the coup makers?
He was definitely an Nkrumah's. There's no ifs, buts, or maybe about it.
So he was friends with Kobedusei then?
Yes, he was.
And Kobedusei came from Kumewu?
Yes.
And this is the seat you want to inherit?
This is correct. Now, the seat is where my mother's side comes in. Because as I was saying, my father is what most people see. My mother is a direct descendant of Chinuba Kodia.
Okay. Kumewu
and Nenya.
Okay.
So the home of Chinuba Kodia. So as a royal of that part of the world, I am able, if selected, to sit on the Berima as a Berima Kumewu. So in our traditional account, you inherit through your mother.
Yes.
So that is where the link to Kumewu comes from.
That's a very controversial seat to choose for Ashanti. There is a very powerful one. There's a very enviable one, and everyone is looking for it. Kobedusei did the unthinkable. He was winning it away from the UP. And that has never happened since Kobedusei.
It has always been.
So it's currently being held by the MPP.
That's correct.
And so you are challenging the incumbent.
Yes, I am.
And there are a few of you.
I understand. So.
Why do you think that you have to go to Parliament?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, let me start up by saying it's not a foregone conclusion. It is going to be decided by the delegates.
Have you picked your forms, by the way?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you paid your money?
We don't have to do what, for the form or for the eventual?
No, for
submission?
the form.
For the form, yes.
You bought the form.
You bought the form. The submission has to be done before February 20th.
And how much are you paying?
Everyone is paying. I have to pay 55,000 because I'm not an incumbent. So 2,000.
How much do incumbents pay?
They pay less the 30,000.
Oh, I see.
It's because for development fee. Okay, but it's okay. It's okay.
So you're going to pay 55,000.
Yes.
And how many delegates are going to be?
There are about just under 400 delegates in Kumewu.
To take the decision.
That's correct. So your question was why Kumewu?
Okay, so that's you in the beautiful photograph. Oh. But why are you running for an MPP seat in this Nkrumah's type of uniform? This is what Kwame Nkrumah, Gbedema, and your father and them used to wear. The MPP doesn't wear that.
I've seen lots of people wearing those.
There's been an infiltration then.
Oh, no, this is. I think it's a nice suit.
So that's 2020. Ahomka Womu is a fancy word, isn't it?
Yes. Well, is Ahomka a fancy? Womu? It depends. You know, in today's world, our current language is evolved a lot. So a lot of words carry across.
But that's a beautiful photograph.
But it's me. It's Ahomka. Yeah. It is my origins.
You're going to take me back onto why.
So I wanted to take you back. So the reality is that I've actually supported both seats. By support, I mean physically every MP that has come there since I came back home in the 2000s.
Which was both seats? Which one?
So both Cape Coast and Kumewu. So
yes, because you're qualified to run in Cape Coast as well.
Well, my father comes from there. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Ghanaians are qualified to run anywhere. I don't think you are limited based on your birth position. Otherwise, a lot of our crowd, there will be lots of people here who won't be running. But I think the point is that because of my origins, my mother and my father's side, I've made an effort to always support both people there. But why Kumewu? It's a very valid question. I feel a very strong bond to Kumewu. I believe that the people in Kumewu today deserve better. Why do I say that? You know, Kumewu, as you said in your initial introduction, has a very rich history.
Very, very.
Very, very rich history. Have you been there lately?
No, I haven't been.
It is a shadow of its former self.
What is its former self?
Its former self was the place that used to have some of the biggest houses in the Ashanti. If you remember the days of Kobe Dusay, B.A. Mensa.
I wasn't
it's
born.
A bit, but B.A. But seriously, Kumawu had a heritage.
It still does. I mean, they say most prominent Ashantis come from Kumawu.
Yes and no, but whether you come from there and the physical infrastructure and the opportunity for work doesn't exist, then we live in a
what's the total population of the Kumawu people?
It's about 70,000 people. Last census
70,000, that's a lot.
It's about 70,000.
Okay.
It is predominantly more than 65%.
Who is the highest ranking politician to come from Kumawu in recent times?
In recent time, it will probably be Minister of Finance Dufour.
Oh, Dr. Dufour.
Dr. Dufour.
Yeah. Oh, he's from Kumawu as well. Yes.
That's right. He would be the most recent in terms of
recent times. He's governor of the central bank.
That's correct.
And then he became finance minister.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but Kumawu, as I said, has a history, a very strong history. It is not reflected in the environment, the opportunities for young people in Kumawu. And when we say Kumawu, by the way, we're talking about Sechere Kumawu, and I think that's one of the things.
Never had that, Sechere Kumawu.
So the actual name is a bit of an anomaly. The name of the district is Sechere Kumawu, but the constituency is Kumawu.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a, but you've got, you've got to the west, you've got Banco. To the east, you've got Bahankra. To the north, you've got Pepiasi. And then to the south, you've got Yoko if you're coming from Ifijase. So you've got a very large agricultural, predominantly community. No industry. There's no industry to speak of. Recently, the president opened up a 1D1F Miro, forestry processing. 70% of all the people in that environment are single business units, so they're basically self-employed, involved in agriculture. And yet, it has so much land that has potential for agro-processing. But what you find is that this is still a very rural area, no industry. Chunuba Kodia Secondary School, TK, is the only thing really that puts it apart today, but even that hasn't really taken it to the level. And I think what you find in Kumawu, unfortunately, and this is the message I hope to take to delegates, is that the divisions has led to today Kumawu being in a situation where it shouldn't be.
What kind of divisions?
This is both political and these are political divisions within the constituency. And there is this is a fact of life. There's been historically issues and chieftaincy at one time.
They still don't have a chief, do they?
Yes, they do.
No, they do now.
They do have. The Burma has been.
There's a video that went around or two for complaining about.
That's correct. So it has had that history. That's why part of my key message is in Kabul, we need to come together.
But the political history, the NDC doesn't have it.
No, Kumawu has always been a very strong MPP.
So why is the political division within the MPP?
The division is within the MPP in terms of the delegates and what is happening on the ground. And so what I hear very clearly as I've gone around speaking to delegates is that they're tired of groups. So because of the diversity of the groups, different groups coming in there, you have a situation where if you're from Banco, they may be feeling that you are with a certain group. If you're from Kumawu, another group. Bodomasi, another group. Nenenya, another group.
What, the constituency has Kumawu and other towns?
It has more than one town. It has many
including Kumawu. But Kumawu is the majority.
Kumawu is the capital.
Okay, but the constituency is called Kumawu.
The constituency is called Kumawu, but it covers more than Kumawu town.
Okay.
So you've got, as I said, you've got Kumawu. To the furthest west, you've got Banco. You've got Bahankra to the furthest east, which borders Agogo, in terms of where you are. You've got Pepiasi to the north, and Oyoko to the south.
Oh, I see.
So you've got, and then you've got the Bodomases, Oyoaso. You've got
and altogether, how many people in the constituency?
About 70,000, but it's physically a very large constituency. So it's about 70,000 people, physically a very large constituency, predominantly young population.
But why do you, as a minister?
So yeah, to go, the second part you asked the question, why Parliament?
Yeah.
Because I believe the role of the legislature is critical. I believe it's critical, and I think it's an area that I believe I can help. Why do we do that? The promulgation of laws, the analysis of laws, keeping the executive in terms of what the legislature is meant to do to keep a check on the legislative as a third arm of the government, or one of the third arm of the government, I think is one that is often underestimated. And in my time that I've been on this side in the executives, I have become to truly appreciate what the MPs have to go through. You know, every time I go to represent my minister at the parliamentary subcommittee, and 1 or 2 times I've gone on the floor of Parliament, what you realize is the workload and the complexity of what is presented in front of MPs. And I believe I have something to offer, something that I believe can add value. And in the same way that I stopped at Coke and came home, I don't believe in being a bystander. I don't believe in standing by the sidelines when you can help, because I think that is a wasted gift, and that doesn't help anybody. You shouldn't be defined at the end of your period by the size of your bank account, but by what you've managed to impact in your time here.
Is it a good time to go into an election and try to go to Parliament? This is a contest of John Mahama and Akufo-Addo.
Yes.
Observers are thinking that it's going to be a very close contest. Even the EIU that predicts Akufo-Addo would win says it's going to be a very close contest. The NDC believe that they will win the election, and they will win the election because the promises that had been made by the President Akufo-Addo and his campaign team, which promise actually rest on the shoulders of your ministry, 1 district, 1 factory, has not happened. They believe that the things Akufo-Addo said he would do, he hasn't done. Never mind the ambulances that were commissioned recently. But the NDC are confident that they will be able to win this election. Don't you think you should have a role in the center in making sure that the promises of 1 district, 1 factory see the light of day, and that the MPP comes up in the perception, rather than trying to get to Kumewu, because you might get to Kumewu and turn your back and Akufo-Addo will not be there.
Well, first of all, I don't think the NDC is going to win. So let's start.
But why wouldn't the NDC win? What have you done?
They will not win because the truth of the matter...
You had 120 ministers.
The truth of the matter is that what we promised, what the president promised, is being delivered. You know, let me talk about the area which is, as you mentioned, is directly the area that I have a lot of knowledge about, the 1 district, 1 factory. You know, this is an area that for the past literally 3+ years, I've spent so many forums trying to explain what is the importance of this program. The first point to note is this: there isn't a country on this earth that has gone anywhere without industrializing. So any party, any entity that says that they've got a different formula clearly are not coming from this earth, because that is a well-trodden path. That's point number 1. Ghana has not industrialized. If we have not industrialized, and we're going through the similar program that the Chinese, Japanese, South Korean, Singaporeans went. In Japan, it was 1 village, 1. In other places, it was 1 tampon, 1 product. It is the same principle about jobs at the level of integration, jobs of where people are, and ensuring we add value. So the journey of doing that, though, is not something that is done on the back of a 2-penny. Let me explain that. Industrialization, building business, is a hard process, but it's the only process you can go through. Our history as a country is defined by businesses starting, failing, linked to our political changes. What we need to try and do is understand and put beyond the value or beyond argument that industrialization is an option. It is not an option. We have to build industries. Now, you can have an argument with the MPP and say, well, you're not building them fast enough. Or you can have some other ideology, but you cannot say we cannot do it.
But you haven't done it.
We have done it. Because
done
when
a confit.
No. We've done more than a confit. When you look at the record, let's look at the record. When we came in, the commitment made was 216 by 2020. Because at that time
216 factories.
It was 216 district. It was 1 district, 1 factory.
Okay, so 216 by 2020.
Exactly.
And we're in January.
So as we stand here, as my minister, they said in the recent results fair, 187.
You have done 187.
No, 187 are various stages. 57 are finished. Of one, the Kumfi is one of them.
So since Akufo-Addo became president,
yes,
Ghana has seen new 57 factories.
Let me come back to your definition of new, because I know that is one of the areas that people have talked about. But let me break it down so we get the full picture. 187, 57 of them are done, dusted, they're selling. About 22 at various stages of building, because like this studio you built here, you didn't wake up one day and build it, took a time to do it. And then you've got another 22, various others at various stages of building. So they've started, the plans are there, the finances are in places, they're being completed. Now that gives you a picture. We said 216 by the end of this year, and we're already close to 200 in terms of where we're going. Now we're 260 district, I accept that, but the commitment we made us that time. Now, I was in Kumasi. It was very interesting. I was in Kumasi and Kesbin. I had an interview in Kesbin, and somebody called in. It said that they had heard that somebody is going to take pictures of